SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to OptimumCBD.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. Well, happy 100 day.
Yeah, milestone day for us, though.
Thank God Ezra Mam's kept us in the topics of conversation. Michael Maguire obviously can't get to the Broncos soon enough. I think those comments, I can't remember who made the comments about Michael Maguire needs to go and the rock star behaviour that we talked about just last week.
Yeah. It didn't take long for something to go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That's the second Ezra Mam incident over the break, and the break's only been 3 weeks.
I know there's a whole legal process that has to take place, but I saw the footage of it. Like driving on the other side of the road. I mean, seriously, what's going on there? This is just madness. And look, I shouldn't. It's. They've suffered injuries. The people in the other car, seatbelt burns, and I think one person has a broken hip as well. Mm-hmm. I was reading this morning. So this is just madness, and he deserves to get sacked as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, they just re-signed him this year. I think it was this year, or at the end of last year. Extended his contract.
Yeah.
And so, but this is one of the things that
I think we had this a little bit lower, but we may as well just start with it now that we're talking about it.
It is the big news. I read a thing that said the potential, depending on the charges, is 14 years in jail.
Yes.
And so they haven't done the charges yet because they're waiting for in the end he tested positive on the roadside test of cocaine at O'Car style. And then they had to do the B test, which takes a little while to come back. Yeah,
I guess the difference between him and Addo Carr is Addo Carr didn't drive on the other side of the road and injure the people in the other car.
Yeah, the A test came back positive for cocaine, and then Addo Carr was allowed to go, but Ezra Mam obviously wasn't allowed to go because he crashed his car, but waiting for the B test to come back, and then it would be driving under the influence and causing injury while under the influence and stuff. So that's a maximum 14-year jail sentence, which falls under the no-fault stand-down rule. So even if they don't sack him, the potential is Ezra Mam will be out until the end of his court case. Isn't that the rule?
Well, this 14 years, you mentioned it, 14 years in prison. That came from lawyer Tom Taylor, who's regarded as one of the most successful criminal defence solicitors in Canberra. So that's come from him. And his quote is, potentially, if injuries were sustained, it could be up to, as you said, 14 years imprisonment. This is a serious situation. One of the passengers in the back seat of the Uber, it was an Uber, the other car. So this was a woman who was in the back seat of the Uber with her daughter. She said her daughter was still in hospital with a broken hip. That was the broken hip I was talking about. And so Nine News interviewed this woman, and she said, and I quote, "I can't rest because every time I close my eyes, all I see is that vehicle." So this is the damage that Ezra Mam has caused. Not only physical injuries to these passengers or the other occupants of the other vehicle, but also potentially long-term psychological impacts as well. So I know I read Corey Parker said, the Broncos should stand by Ezra Mam. It'd be the easy thing to sack him. Well, no, it's not their responsibility. It's not their job to look after him as a human being. He needs to pay a price for his actions. And he should be sacked as far as I'm concerned. And I saw this sob story where he's going to get professional help. No, I don't care. These people in the other car have been injured, and he needs to pay a price for his actions. I don't care about him needing professional help. I'm sick of this sob story. I'm sick of people not taking responsibility for their actions.
Well, we talked about it with the Paul Kemp thing, It's like you go to rehab. First thing you would have done, talk to a lawyer. Lawyer would have said, check yourself into rehab. Ezra Mam's off to rehab because then they can say to the judge, look, he's taken responsibility. He's checked himself into rehab for a more lenient sentence. And yet, look, this isn't one of those cases where Jack de Belin is obviously the most famous one, where it was a he said, she said situation that required a court case and potential time more than 11 years in jail, so no fault stand down. This is a clear cut. He definitely did it. There's no way he's going to plead not guilty.
Yeah, he should. I mean, they played the footage on the news the other night. You could see the car going on the other side of the road.
So it's not like one of those things where the Dragons stood by Jack de Belin, and you can agree or disagree with that as much as you want. But the Dragons stood by him because he always professed his innocence. And I can't remember who the other guy was because the other guy was an under-20s player. Ezra Mam isn't coming out and going, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It's not the kind of thing where they go, well, look, we should wait until the courts take care of it, and all that thing. What should be wait until the courts take care of it is what the outcome of Ezra Mam's sentencing is, not what the Broncos decide to do. And of course, Corey Parker, Broncos legend, ex-Broncos man, wants to keep the star player that they just re-signed recently to a long-term deal, I think. I agree. I think he should be sacked. It comes on the back of 3 weeks ago, him and Reece Walsh are in hospital in Bali. And then the Broncos have all been banned from Bali or some other such thing,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, what the Broncos do about it, that seems to me to be the least of his worries at the moment. If we got lawyers talking about potentially 14 years imprisonment, I don't think he's going to be... His chief concern is going to be what the Broncos are going to do about it. If he's in jail, there's not a whole lot the Broncos are going to... Yeah. The Broncos aren't going to have much say in it if he goes to jail.
And it was 5 years he re-signed with in this year, earlier this year, the beginning of the season. He re-signed for 5 years. Of course, Corey Parker's going to say, they should stand by him and so on. But he's facing, we don't know yet because the charges haven't come down. So you don't know. It could be reduced charges or whatever. But, it could be up to 14 years. So either way, if it gets to that, he has to go under the no fault stand down, which means he's not allowed to play till the court case is resolved. Either way, the Broncos, he doesn't count towards the salary cap in that case, which is the whole thing with Jack de Belin, right? He wasn't allowed to play. He wasn't allowed to play anything. He could only train, and then he didn't count towards the salary cap.
Yeah. Yeah, just a couple more quotes from that lawyer, Tom Taylor, who I just quoted before. A couple of more quotes which are interesting. He says, and I quote, "The two bigger charges really are the charges that relate to the drug allegedly in his system. If it is that the blood sample that was taken at the hospital confirms the presence of a drug in his system." He goes on to say, if there were injuries suffered by the occupants of the other car, then the charges about the driving and the alleged drug driving are the ones he's got the most to worry about. And Taylor said the result of the second drug test should be known in a week or two. So it seems like that's what we're waiting on here. We're awaiting the result of that second drug test. And as you said, once that's known, well, then charges will be laid here. That's what the hold-up is here. Charges
are a given. What the charges are determines the potential sentencing. If it's over, I think it's 11 years at no fault stand down, then, I didn't agree with Jack de Belin getting sentenced, and I know getting suspended, and I don't agree with the no fault stand down rule because of innocent until proven guilty. And in the end, you can go on and on about Jack de Belin all you want. I think it ended up being 2 mistrials, and then they didn't want to continue with the third one or some such nonsense like that, which doesn't make him not guilty. It also doesn't make him guilty.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, whatever your thoughts are on Jack de Belin, the fact of the matter is he was not convicted, and he missed a fair chunk of his career.
2 years.
He missed 2 years, and you probably followed him closer than me. But I'd argue he hasn't come back the same player.
No, definitely. He was an Origin player.
Yeah, and he's not come back the same player. He's had to sit out for 2 years, and that's after no conviction was not convicted of any crime, and had to sit out for 2 years.
As I said, it's cut and dry with Ezra Mam.
Well, we saw the footage on the news.
There's no, they said, I said. He was definitely in a car accident caused by him. The only thing we don't know yet is whether he was definitely under the influence.
So all we're waiting on really is the result of that second drug test.
Whether there's a no-fault stand-down or not, as you said at the beginning, Broncos should sack him, and no one should take him.
This is the thing, the idea that it's their responsibility to sort of nurture him and help him out. No. There is employer. Yeah. There is employer, like in any other job. In any other job, in any other industry, if you did something like that, you'd be out the door. You'd be gone. And so why is it any different for him? It's a place of employment.
How many chances are they going to give him? It's only been 2 weeks since his last issue. I know they come back in November or whatever the crap it is from the thing and blah, blah, and they have 6 weeks off, and Michael Maguire hasn't officially taken over. But Michael Maguire isn't the kind of... Well, it depends on if you listen to Sam Burgess's wife or not, but Michael Maguire isn't the guy that allows that kind of behaviour.
No. He would have been ropeable. He would have been furious. But this is... I don't even think... And I know you mentioned that incident that happened a couple of weeks ago with him and Reece Walsh. I mean, I don't even... I'm to be honest, I'm not even really thinking about that. This is a very serious offence in itself. The fact that he's driven on the other side of the road, he's had one positive test. We're awaiting the second positive test. Drugs in his system. He's gone on the other side of the road and he's injured the passengers in the other car. I mean, it could have been a lot more serious than what it was. That they could have... Well,
yeah, it's topical because of the Harbour Bridge last week as well. It could have been a lot more serious.
Absolutely. It could have been more serious, but serious enough as it is. These people, as I've said, they've sustained injuries. The daughter's suffered that broken hip, the seatbelt burns, and the psychological impact of this as well. That shouldn't be lost either. Those passengers in the other car and the Uber driver, well, they're going to be scarred by this mentally, by this incident. They're going to have to live with it for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
So there's no... This should not be taken lightly. This is a serious offence. And this idea that, the club needs to help him, well, no, it wouldn't happen in any other industry. These players are really well paid. They're well looked after, more so than employees in other organisations. So for the idea that they should be afforded special treatment just because they're footballers, no, that's a load of rubbish to me. That's a load of nonsense.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's time you need clubs to take the firm stand actually, because they're constant looking after them and all that kind of thing. It's year in year on year in, every year. Like actually, this cocaine thingy is the 4th or 5th time in the past 2 years. It's obvious, as I always say, when we talk about these, like with Josh Adokar, with Brandon Smith last year, with Valentine Holmes the last year, that's just the one you see because they're stupid enough to let something happen to them when they get caught.
Mm. Yeah.
Look at those names, okay? What was his? It's Brandon Smith, right?
Brandon Smith.
Yeah, so he was at the Storm and then the Roosters. Then you have Valentine Holmes from North Queensland Cowboys. Then you have Josh Adokar from the Bulldogs, and then you have Ezra Mam from the Broncos. That's 4 vastly different teams from 4 vastly different locations, 4 vastly different players. You'd have to say there is a big... that's just the 4 you see. Now, out of the more than 400 first-grade rugby league players, all that's really saying to the public is nobody's thinking, it's just those 4 guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Coincidentally, it's just those 4 guys.
Yeah.
So, I think it was Mitchell Pearce we talked about. They do the drug test on Tuesday. Maybe they should start drug testing them on Saturdays. Because it's beyond ridiculous, and this is now a really terrible one. You had the Josh Adokar one that we talked about, the potential of what could have happened. driving under the influence and the ridiculousness of the police letting him go. And then you have the Ezra Mam one now with, well, we can see what could have happened with Josh Adokar.
Yeah, 100%. There's actually conflicting reports over who was actually in the Uber. There's one report that's saying the mother was driving the Uber with the daughter as a passenger. There's another report saying that the mother and daughter were passengers. But either way, I mean, we know that injuries have been suffered here, and by the sounds of what that lawyer was saying, well, that's going to be an issue for Ezra Mam.
Well, so we'll know by next week, I guess, whether the second result comes back and as positive, and then the police will probably issue charges then.
Yeah, that's the key factor here, it seems.
100%.
And I'd say he's in a lot of trouble. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, judging by what this lawyer said, well, it sounds like he's in all sorts of trouble, Ezra Mam.
But let's look at the Pacific Championships.
Yes.
Which, we did jump ahead because Ezra Mam gave us
news. Yeah.
So in the most important Pacific Championships, the women's one, the Kangaroos took on the PNG Orchids, scoring 84 to 0. Now, I think Taryn Aiken needs to fix her conversions because after the 17 tries scored, she only kicked 8 from 17.
Oh, gee, yeah. Yeah, that's... So they
that's
kicked...
16 points.
So they kicked the other 9, that's 18 points.
They're 102.
So they would have scored over 100 if she kicked all the goals. Right.
Yeah. So on to the men's. The Kangaroos played Tonga, and it was a bit of a hot mess. I forgot it was on, and then I started watching. It was a bit of a hot mess of a game, I thought. Yeah,
it was pretty clunky. The Aussies, I think, with that new spine, they need a bit of time to gel. They looked a bit clunky. Did score, won 18-0. They were very good defensively, the Australians. But, 3 tries. One of them was an interceptor, Tom Trbojevic. So for the rest of the game, only managing the 2 tries. But their defence, obviously, playing a key factor in the victory.
They made more tackles than Tonga. It was 348 to 312. But scored I was watching the bits that I watched after I got home. It was just like an error fest. Now I'm looking at the thing here. The Kiwis had 19 errors to Tonga's 9. 19 errors. That's a lot.
Very clunky. It's very clunky, the Kangaroos, for sure.
Just didn't look good at all. Zach Lomax looked good, though.
Yeah, it's more the spine that was the issue. Mitchell Moses, he seemed to be a bit out of sorts. He only played 8 games for the season in the NRL, didn't play after round 18, so I think that time he's had out of the game was obviously a factor. Obviously, you hope that he'll be better for the run. I guess maybe that was the one issue with... I know they picked him because he was the better of the 2 halfbacks in the State of Origin series with New South Wales winning that State of Origin series. But I guess the one issue with picking him over Cherry Evans was the fact that Cherry Evans did play a lot of football this year and played late into the season, featured in the final series. And whereas Moses was really underdone, as we say, didn't play after round 18, so maybe that could have come into Mal Meninga's thinking. I'm guessing that Australia are just hoping that, by the end of the tournament they'll be a lot more fluent than they are at the start.
Yeah, I think
they're aiming to peak when the final is on here.
Well, combining Tom Dearden as the 6 as well. Like when you look at you can't use stats as the only indicator. But when you look at Mitch Moses and Tom Dearden's stats, they have 0 assists. So 0, not just try assists. All the tries were one-man shows. As you said, there was that Tom Trbojevic intercept tries.
Yeah.
So nobody got a try assist, but also the halves didn't get a single line break assist. Mitch Moses did get a couple of tackle breaks, but what's his name? Hamaso Tabuai Fido was obviously the best in that department. But yeah, Mitch Moses and Tom Dearden's stats for halves don't look good. Because
this is the issue for Australia is, alright, they beat Tonga 18-0, but the issue is, well, how are they going to go against New Zealand? As we said, they're coming off a 30-0 defeat in that final of the Pacific Championship last year. So that's the thing. Alright, they got away with it against Tonga. They defended really well. They got the victory. But New Zealand are the big test here. New Zealand were the ones who thrashed them in the final last year. So that's how they're going to be judged, how they go against New Zealand and how they go in this tournament. This is a must-win tournament for Australia after last year losing it in such terrible fashion. They can't afford to lose two of these tournaments in a row or not win two of them in a row. And the pressure's on Mal Meninga here. If Australia don't win this tournament, well, he should go. I think he was lucky to even survive after they lost one tournament final.
That's how
especially
it works.
In that fashion as well. It's not like it was a close game in the final. I mean, they got hammered in that final by New Zealand. I thought he was lucky to keep his job. There's no way he hangs on to that job if Australia don't win this tournament.
Definitely not. But Queensland might take him back. He's always got the Queensland to go back to anyway. And then you have Ben Hunt was on the bench.
Yes. So he was the 18th. Yeah.
Was the 18th bench?
So he wasn't. That was the issue.
Right,
He wasn't on the interchange, and so.
But I remember Matt Burton. Sorry. Matt Burton was on the bench, and he only came on for.
Yeah, not long. I've got it written down here. So Burton only came on with 9 minutes left in the game. So what was the point of that? Burton only went on for 9 minutes, and Hudson Young, he only went on for 12 with 12 minutes left. So that's just not using all the interchange players. And that's the thing. The other point to mention, Harry Grant left the field for a rest. But there was no backup hooker. Leaving Ben Hunt out, they didn't have a backup hooker. And so Ruben Cotter actually jumped into dummy half because they had no backup hooker. So that really didn't make much sense. I think they had Matt Burton on the bench because they were worried about Tom Trbojević's fitness. Burton was there as cover. If Trbojević had gone down injured, well, you can put Burton in the centres. He can. That is the advantage of having Burton. He can play multiple positions in the back line. Obviously, he's a 5'8", but he can play in the centres as well. But I don't know. Can you really approach it? Can you really pick bench players based on if someone gets injured? I don't know if you can. I think you just got to roll the dice and hope they all get through. I think you got to go, well, who adds more value to the team? I think, Ben Hunt would because he's a backup hooker to Harry Grant as opposed to Burton, who's just there in case someone gets injured.
You can if you're Queensland and Joseph Suolii's in New South Wales. Then it's genius.
Yeah.
pick a winger in the bench. But yeah, it seems like Ben Hunt should have been the interchange, especially if the plan was to give Harry Grant a rest. And for Queensland, Ben Hunt and Harry Grant, the rotation was really good. So they can do that. They do that at the Queensland level, and that's one of the best combinations. Before State of Origin, we discussed it with I think Craig Gower. That was my big highlight of the Queensland team: the ability of those two guys to interchange and play completely different hooking roles, disrupting the defence. And they only scored 18 points, which you would have expected a lot more. Obviously, they held them out pretty well, but. Even at some point, it's the opening game. They're expected to win. What was the halftime score? The halftime was 6-0. Halfway through the second half, nothing's doing.
Yep.
They could have taken Tom Dearden off and dropped Matt Burton in. Just to give him more game time if it's a warm-up game for this week's game. But it was a shocking game. I didn't watch it all, as I said. I completely forgot it was on. I'm setting my alarm for Sunday. Sunday's a big sports day. But what I did watch was not a good game of rugby league. It was a scrappy drop-a-thon. It looked like a spoon bowl.
Yeah, well, it wasn't great. Obviously, just the combination's just clunky because they haven't played together. But I guess the debate is in a tournament like this. If you're Australia, well, do you give everybody a run in the first 2 games and then pick your best team for the final, or do you just pick your best team every week and give them time to gel? I'm more in the latter camp. I think, you pick your best team and you get them to gel because
there's only 3 games.
Yeah, so I don't think this idea that let's give them all a game before the final. No, not when there's only 2 games going into the final.
When you have a World Cup and you've got to play 3 or 4 games before the knockout, like in the pool stage, you can do that when you're Australia, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's more suited to a World Cup, that mentality, than a Pacific Championship.
No, they need to dominate Tonga so they could go into the second. Because obviously New Zealand hasn't played a match.
Yeah.
They have also new halves combos and stuff like that. So, you could theorise that also was the kind of tactic. Like, it's okay, we've both got new spines that we're going to have to work on. And we at least will get a chance to do ours before we have to play New Zealand. But, they have to, as you said at the beginning, like, Australia's goal should be to overcome last year.
Yeah. And you talk about last year, well, all right, Meninga's dropped James Tedesco, but he's replaced him with Dylan Edwards. And Dylan Edwards, all right, we know he's a great player. We obviously know what he's done with Penrith and everything. But he's playing injured at the moment. He's got a knee injury. There was criticism of his performance the other night. And, people were saying, they were pointing out that, well, if Kalen Ponga had been there, would he have done more than Dylan Edwards? Well, yeah, he would have, because he's not busted. Dylan Edwards is busted with a knee injury. So it just seems to me that Mal Meninga falls into the trap of picking players on reputation rather than who's actually going to perform the best in the game on the day. I know there was that circus with Kalen Ponga beforehand. I know it was, it was very silly the way he went about it with saying he didn't want to play and then at the last minute backflipping and saying he did want to play. But Mal Meninga lost the final 30-0 last year. He can't afford any more slip-ups. He needs to pick the players who are going to perform the best on the day. And as I said, Dylan Edwards, he's hampered with a knee injury at the moment. He's not fit. He maybe shouldn't have been there, and maybe Kalen Ponga should have been there.
Yeah, well, when you talk about Mal Meninga picking on reputation, that's what he's built his representative career around. But then you can go back and look at who was there for him to pick on reputation in that Queensland period with Darren Lockyer, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, Israel Folau, Cameron Smith. You can just pick them on reputation because they were of such a level that even if they were playing a little bit injured, like Dylan Edwards is, doesn't matter. They were still better than their New South Wales counterpart. Look how many halves New South Wales went through during that period because none of them were better than Jonathan Thurston and Darren Lockyer.
Yeah. Look, don't get me wrong. I get the idea of selecting Edwards if he was fit.
Yeah, he'd be first.
If he was fit, I'd agree with it 100%. But the fact is, he's not fit. Yeah. You need players who are fit. Yeah. And given that you had another option like a Ponga, put it this way: would Ponga have done a better job than Edwards the other night? Yeah, I think he would have. Yeah, because Ponga's not carrying the injury that Edwards is carrying.
Yeah, exactly.
Edwards is busted. And I would have thought Meninga would have learned from last year, picking Tedesco, who looked slower last year going into that series. He carried him into that tournament, and look what happened in the final. It just seems like Meninga, he just doesn't... And I know, all right, he's an immortal, I get that. He's an immortal of the game. Well, we have to declare that every time, even though we don't agree with, his decisions. But, yeah, I just think you got to pick who's going to give you... You got to pick who's going to perform the best in the game. That's your main concern.
There's it's bizarre that actually this is the pathway that we've gone down. Where last year he picked James Tedesco, who looked like we discussed it. We got a little bit of flack from it from every Roosters fan in the universe. James Tedesco had a subpar year last year and probably shouldn't have been in the Australian team. Well, most likely, like out of there was Kalen Ponga there, who was. Dally and winner Kalen Ponga, right? This year, based on form and current injury, James Tedesco almost won the Dally M. You know, James Tedesco was in the best attacking team in the comp. James Tedesco, I think, had more line break assists or try assists or something than any other player in the... Like, he was up there in the top 5 with line break assists, try assists, tackle breaks, all the attacking stats. So it's... If you're going to pick James Tedesco this year to last year, surely this year is you pick him. If Kalen Ponga has made himself unavailable, then brought himself back because he doesn't want to get suspended, and you're going to pick a second fullback, surely James Tedesco is it. I know you got Tom Trbojevic in there, who can play centre and fullback. Even then, surely Tom Trbojevic could have played fullback and pick a different centre.
Here is another option. Hamiso is another fullback at club level. There were other options there. So I mean, I think he's gonna stick with the guys he's gone with because he's gonna hope that they get better. But he's just got to win this tournament, Mal Meninga. Otherwise, he'll be replaced as Australian coach.
We'll find out. The team announcements will get done today, and then we'll know if he's stuck with the same thing.
Yeah. Obviously Australia winning that test against Tonga 18-0. Australia will go on and play New Zealand this week. So we talked a bit about it last week, the way this tournament works. So the way that it works is Australia, Tonga and New Zealand are in the Pacific Cup. Now, obviously, on finals day, you'll have the top 2 in the cup will obviously play off against each other. And that other game, so that'll be whoever finishes 3rd in the cup will play the winner of the bowl, which is Fiji, PNG and Cook Islands. So they'll play the winner of the bowl in a promotion relegation game, and whoever wins that game will play in the cup next year. So
that's better.
So that's how they're doing it, and so
that's better than last year.
And so PNG had an upset win over Fiji in the bowl the other night,
them.
And I thought that was. I was surprised. I thought Fiji were underwhelming. They got players like Sunia Taruva, Micah Sivo, Michael Jennings, Tui Kamikamika, Viliami Kikau. For them not to beat PNG, I thought it was really disappointing. Andrew Johns made a good point in commentary. He said Fiji are playing too structured. They need to play more off the cuff. It suits them more to play off the cuff. And I think he was right.
I think it felt to me... I only watched the highlights, like the 20-minute highlights. It felt to me like PNG is proving why they should be in the NRL. You know, because they had, as you said, like you went through the names there with Fiji. You go through the PNG team, and it's got, Jack de Bellin's in there. Nene McDonald was the fullback.
Yeah, Nene McDonald, Jack de Bellin. Reece Martin's the other one, the former Bulldog who went to the Super League. But apart from those 3, it was a really unrecognisable team.
Yeah, no criticism. It just shows how good they actually are and how good they can
be. Well, it just goes to show I'm surprised Fiji didn't win. Sunia Taruva's just come off winning a premiership with the Panthers.
You go through their backline.
Michael Jennings played in the final series with the Roosters.
Micah Sivo is one of the winners. He's had a
glittering career. Tui Kamikamika started for the Storm in the front row in the grand final. Viliami Kikau played in the final series.
Tani
this
Milner's
team going
there.
up against PNG.
Yeah. And they won. And it was good. Kevin Nguama is in there. Like, there's so many more recognisable names in the Fiji party. I'm sure if you follow Queensland Cup, you know a lot of these PNG guys. But, we're from New South Wales. So, it's like ex-Dragon Nene McDonald. And that's the thing, right? That's what I kept seeing him mentioned as. That's how famous Nene McDonald is, right? He's ex-Dragon Nene McDonald playing for PNG. He plays for the Salford Red Devils now. But you look at Nene McDonald, who is basically a fringe first grader. He's been around for 10 years. He's played 168 games. He's played at the Roosters, Titans, St. George, Cowboys, Cronulla Sharks, Leeds Centurions, Leeds Rhinos, Salford Red Devils. And this was the starring guy in the PNG team. Now, that just tells me you put PNG into the NRL and you're going to have a cracker of a team. And it's going to be, like I said last week, everyone's second favourite team.
Yeah, and I like the thinking of looking to a PNG team rather than going back to Perth and Adelaide. As we said, Perth and Adelaide have been tried, or Perth in particular, they're the ones who've been looked at, but that's been tried before. And that didn't work last time. So if something doesn't work, I don't know why you go back to it. You look at other options, don't you? And I think the PNG option is the right option, and I'm glad they're looking down that path.
After the PM's 13 and this game, I think PNG is the way to go because they're going to be a force in the NRL.
And there's that, and just the passion of the fans as well is another. We want to be growing the game in areas that are passionate about the game, and PNG is. I mean, you compare it to somewhere like Melbourne where nobody cares about rugby league. Well, absolutely, we want to be looking to places like PNG to come into the NRL and grow the game even further up there.
100%. Excuse me. So I think we talked about last week the World Club Challenge, right?
Yes.
Obviously, there's some big issues around the World Club Challenge because Panthers are going to Vegas.
Yes.
And I think Wigan are going to Vegas.
I need to check which Super League
There's
teams
a Super League,
are going to.
There's a Super
There
League
is.
game in
I'm
Vegas.
just going to check. There is a Super League game. I'm just not sure if Wigan are the team. Actually, they are. Yes, they are. And so
there's been calls. We'll start with the Storm because the Panthers have said we're not going to England then to bloody Vegas.
Yeah.
Because if you go back to the beginning of the year, all the teams that went to Vegas had a hangover. And South never got over it. Manly were all over the shop. So obviously
the Broncos certainly didn't get over it.
Broncos never got over it. So the Panthers have just flat out said, if we're going to England, we're not going to England. It's been in England for since it was in on.
If we're going to Vegas, we're not going to England.
No, but I mean, if it's because they originally said if we have to go to England, we're not doing it. If you come to Australia, we'll do it.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Because there was a period of time where it was alternating, and then COVID's happened, right? So that's what they said. We're happy to do it as long as you come here, but it's obviously in the middle of the season for the Super League, so they said, well, we can't come there. And so then then they said, Panthers said, well, we're not doing it because we've got to go to Vegas. We don't have a choice, we're going to Vegas. And so some people have said maybe Storm can do it instead. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's stupid. It takes away from what the World Club Challenge is.
But I just don't see why is it up to Penrith to decide if they play in it or not? I mean, it's up to the governing bodies to work this out. I would have thought. I don't see why Penrith think that they're in their rights to just say, oh, we're not going to play. I mean, I just don't see why it's up to them. I think
in the end, what they would do is if they were demanded to play, they would just send their Jersey flag team, basically.
Yeah.
They say, everyone is injured, sorry, we can't go. Because they can just do that. Everyone's in. And it's not like the NRL can impose sanctions and say, well, then if you're injured, then you can't play on the weekend because it's in February and there's no game to play on the weekend. So there's nothing the NRL could do to stop them from just going, that's cool, we're just sending Billy Bob from the under-17s as our registered NRL player. And so that's basically the threat, I think. Like the Panthers have said, well, we're not going to try, we're not going to bother, we're not going to do it if you make us do it, so we're just not going to do it. And, I would prefer it. I want to go back to the day where there was at least 1 year, I know it was before COVID and COVID ruined everything, where they did a 4-team tournament. And it was meant to alternate between Australia and New Zealand, Australia and England. And I think it was at the end of the year, but I can't remember. There was that one period where they did a 4-team tournament. I would much prefer that. I don't think the Storm should go. That's just, as I said, ridiculous. Storm can go and play their runner-up. And that's actually what it should be, I reckon. The Panthers would play... It was Wigan, right? Wigan won again?
Yeah, Wigan won the Super League.
Second year in a row. Panthers can play Wigan and Storm could play... It was Hull.
I think it was Hull KR.
Hull KR. Hull KR, yeah. Could play Hull KR. And then next year, finalists and runner-up. But just for the Storm to go and play Wigan, it's nothing. Like, what do you win? We're the world champions now? Well, you're not, because Panthers beat you.
I just think with a concept like the World Club Challenge, you're either all in on it or you're not. I don't think you can sort of do it halfway. I think if you're not going to do it properly, and look, when I say properly, I mean properly is 1 year over there, the next year over here. That's the fair way. I agree in the sense that I don't think the Australian team should have to go over to England every year. I think it should alternate. And look, you might say, oh, well, that's unlucky for the teams Aussie team who has to go to England. Look, nothing's completely perfect.
It's also unlucky for the English team.
I think you just got to just live with that.
Last 2 years would have been perfect because Wigan versus Panthers in 1 year. Wigan versus Panthers.
Yeah, but I think if you're going to do it, well, you do it properly like that. And I don't think, Penrith is saying, oh, but we got to go to Vegas. Well, so what? Go to England if it is in England. And again, as I just said, I don't agree that it should be in England every year. I don't. I think 1 year, as I said, 1 year in England, 1 year in Australia. But look, if it's in England, it's in England. And if they have to go before Vegas, well, go play in Vegas before. These guys are footballers, professional footballers who get paid a good salary. And what, they don't want to play an extra game in England before they have to go to Vegas? I don't get this argument that, but player welfare and everything. No, that's their job. There's bricklayers on a fraction of what they get who bend their back every day. And who cares about their welfare? Nobody. So I don't know what professional footballers are talking about when they say, our welfare. Yeah, your job is to play football. If you're asked to play an extra game in England, the World Club Challenge, before you go to Vegas, well, I'm sorry, you've got to play. That's it.
There's so many better ways to do it, and I think that's actually they should play. Like, that's the thing. Like, you have to play. That's your job.
That's their job.
But they want to talk about welfare. Well, the NRL should do the welfare. So the NRL Grand Final was on a weekend, and then I think a weekend after was the Super League Grand Final. So why didn't they play it a weekend after that? Why?
There's that argument to move it to straight after the seasons.
Because one of the what are they called? The Australian clubs' always complaint is, and the reason it has to be in England is because it's in the middle of, well, not in the middle, but it's after the Super League season has started. So the Super League team is in form, has games under their belt, all that kind of blah, 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 blah. Whereas the Rugby League team has to use it as a trial game. And they don't get trials because of it.
And I don't like this argument that, we have to have it in England each year because if it was in Australia, the Aussie team would win easily. No, I'm not buying that. It's got to be fair. Fair is 1 year over there, 1 year over here. That's the fair way of doing it. Yeah, that's how it should be.
So the Super League next year will start... April League season will start 14th to 16th of February. So they start earlier than us, finish around the same time. Just do it after the season and 1 year off, 1 year off. And like I said, I'd love to see the 4-team tournament to make it more interesting. Not a tournament, actually. Just a double header. Really? That's all you need, a double header. So Panthers and Storm could go 1 year and play Wigan and all KR. Next year, whoever wins and whoever comes second comes to Australia, plays whoever wins and whoever comes second. Let's hope it's not the Panthers and the Storm.
And one other point to make is, why can't the NRL wait until the season is over before picking the teams who go to Vegas the next year and not pick the premiership winning team, because the premiership winning team is going to play in the World Club Challenge? Yeah. Why didn't the NRL foresee this as a potential issue? They make they put the best team on in Vegas, they announce it early, and now we have this farcical scenario where the team that wins the premiership don't want to play in the World Club Challenge because they're playing in Vegas. Easy solution: wait to see who wins the premiership and don't send the premiership winning team to Vegas. Hello?
Yeah,
and people go, but that's leaving it a bit late. No, it's not. What, we're in October? The game's not until March.
Yeah, none of them...
We've got 6 months. 6 months.
Let's just hope they apply for visa... They applied for their visas earlier this year, because remember last year they were struggling for visas right up until the end, the last couple of days. I think it was Reece Walsh didn't have a visa and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was an issue.
But meanwhile, the Nathan Cleary has suggested, why don't they hold it during Magic Round?
It's just the logistics of that. Getting the English team to come out here.
No, this year they could. That's why he suggested it, because it is Wigan and Panthers will be in Vegas together at the same time. Because Wigan's the team that's playing the Super League thingy. Isn't he just talking?
Oh, yeah, but he's talking about the match. So Nathan Cleary's talking about the Magic round. So the round where all the games are in Brisbane.
Oh, during Magic
round. So during the season.
No, that's nonsense.
But how does that work logistics-wise? And look, all right, Nathan Cleary's won 4 straight premierships. Okay, but...
No, that's nonsense.
But,
sorry, I misread it.
But look, Nathan Cleary doesn't decide when the World Club Challenge is on. The administrators, the governing bodies decide when and where the World Club Challenge is on.
Absolutely no way that could work. It's the kind of thing that I would imagine someone saying it in mid-sentence saying, this happens sometimes where you go like, I got an awesome idea. Why don't we play the World Club Challenge during Magic Round? No, that's a stupid idea. Sorry, forget I said it. That is as far as that idea should go. Because the Panthers have to play, and then what? Are they going to play again the next day?
Yeah, it's one of those, it sounds like a good idea, but the logistics of it are just a nightmare, and it doesn't work.
They should play it during Vegas. Go a week earlier and play it in Vegas.
That's actually not...
Because I read
that's
this
not
wrong.
A bad idea at all.
They're both going to be in Vegas.
Play the World Club Challenge in Vegas as one of the Vegas games.
Well, they could definitely do it this year. There's no reason why they couldn't do it. Both of those teams have been picked before they won the premiership to go to Vegas.
I think we're onto something here.
Yeah, there's no reason why they shouldn't.
That's you get rid of that problem, don't you? You play the World Club Challenge as one of the Vegas games, so that could be one of the games.
Yeah.
And you could have another
now
NRL game.
Who's going with Wigan to the World Club Challenge? Did you check before?
It's Warrington. Yep.
Yeah, so then Warrington can play whoever Panthers' opponent was.
Melbourne.
No, I mean who's
in Vegas. Yeah. Cronulla,
yeah. Warrington can just play Cronulla. Just this year, because luckily we fell into a coincidental thing. And then next year they can go, well, that was pretty good. Let's do it again. The danger of that is, what if Cronulla and the Panthers piece up the opposition and it ends up being like a 60-minute scoreline or an 84-0.
I'll tell you one funny thing I've noticed just looking at these Vegas teams for next year while we're on it. The Raiders are playing the Warriors as one of the games. So we know what excuses are going to be made for Ricky next year.
Oh my God, he's got a year's worth of excuses.
The Ricky Stewart excuse is served up on a plate for next year. Buzz Rothfield will be... The first thing Buzz Rothfield will be saying, if we fast forward to round 6 next year and the Raiders haven't won many games... Oh, the Raiders have had a Vegas hangover. They had to play in Vegas.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Yeah, so they'll be making. So if the Raiders miss the 8 next year, the excuse will be, they had to play in Vegas this year. Yeah. So the excuse is there already for the Raiders.
Already giving it to them. Yeah. Speaking of Nathan Cleary and his silly ideas.
To be fair, this wasn't his idea.
I know.
But this. Former Rugby Australia chairman Hamish McLennan wants Nathan Cleary to be targeted by the ARU.
He's never going to go to the rugby union.
It's just not going to happen, right? This comes after Joseph Suaalii switched to the rugby union.
He was identified by rugby union people, Joseph Suaalii, when he was a child. And the rugby union bosses were urged to sign him as a child, actually, and they ignored it. They could have got him out of whatever school he went to for like $50,000 a year, and they stupidly ignored it, and then they ended up having to pay him whatever it was, the $100 million or whatever he's.
Well, he's the highest paid footballer in any code in Australia now, Joseph Suaalii.
But Nathan Cleary's not going to go to rugby union and touch the ball 3 times a game and become a nobody. The only thing that Nathan Cleary's going to do is if he does. If his relationship with Mary Fowler gets more serious, I would say he'd go to the Super League. Because
that's a lot more chance of happening than him going to rugby union.
Because he's on $1 million. Nathan Cleary's on $1 million a year here, but Mary Fowler's earning potential is way higher, even if it is women's football. And she's carving up in Manchester City, so she's at City, I think she's got a match-winning goal last week. You can check it out on the SmartB Daily Dose of News. Like, she's always in the soccer news. She's super popular in England. She's got a World Cup coming up. I don't know. That's 3 more years away. But yeah, that's the only thing that's ever likely to happen. There's no chance Nathan Cleary's going to rugby union.
Yeah, well, rugby union were a lot more chance of signing high-profile NRL players like Nathan Cleary. 20 years ago back when News Limited owned the NRL, there was a real issue of them underselling the TV rights to Fox because they had that conflict of interest of owning the NRL and owning Fox. So what did they do? They went and undersold the TV rights, and that cost the game a lot of money. But now that the game is run by an independent commission, these players are actually being paid decent money now. And so the chances of them switching to rugby union are very far-fetched. So I remember about 20 years ago, there would look like to be a real prospect of Andrew Johns going to rugby union. I think that was a lot more... I mean, that didn't even happen back then, but that was a lot more chance of happening back then than what Nathan Cleary is going to rugby union.
I remember he was getting big money from rugby union. He tried to make it work where he would play rugby union in the off-season or something. I think that was Andrew Johns as well, in the rugby league.
Yeah, and I mean, there was even one year where he went and had that stint with Warrington in the off-season. They let him do it. I think it was a year where the Knights missed the top 8.
That was the year that he... That was 2005.
I think so, yeah.
Because that was the year where he was out for 13 rounds and they hadn't won a game, or 14 rounds.
And then he came back and they lost $1 million.
Lost the first game, got picked for Origin after New South Wales was down 1-0. Had that ridiculously good game, game 2.
Yeah.
And then Newcastle missed out on the 8 after they won their next 11 or something. And he, I think it was also really funny because he did the Dally M's. I really remember that. It was such a funny year of football. Jonathan Thurston's first Dally M medal.
Yeah.
And Andrew Johns was on the big screen, and it came down to the last round. And so you could see the smirk on Andrew Johns' face. It was like, mate, if I had played the first 14 games.
I'll tell you what, the only thing I would say about that is, and look, of course, Andrew Johns was a great player, but everyone talks about that series he had in 2005, and look, it was great, of course it was. But Queensland won 11 out of 12 series between 2006 and 2017. Everyone talks about the Andrew Johns in 2005. But Queensland won 11 out of 12. You know what I mean? Like Andrew Johns is an immortal, and it seems like that 2005 Origin series played some part in that decision. Queensland won 11 out of 12. Yeah. I know we don't like Queensland. But you get my point.
I do.
Like, how did one of those Queensland players not yet become an immortal?
Because
when Andrew Johns is an immortal,
it's because none of them have done what Andrew Johns did in that series. He single-handedly dominated the second game. Even Anthony Minicello was recently interviewed, and they finally asked him about his first try, which was a beautifully placed Andrew Johns kick.
Yeah.
That Mini busted the line and chased down, and the ball bounced off the goalpost. And Anthony Minicello was recently interviewed, and he said, he told me the day before he was going to do it, and he yelled at me he was about to do it. That's why. Because
I know. It was a great series by Andrew Johns, but I just, you know what I mean. I just go, look what Queensland did after that, and they don't, and none of those players as yet, and I know some of them are only very recently retired. But none of those Queensland players as yet have been made immortals, and they've won 11 out of 12.
It's solely because none of them were able to change it. New South Wales was gone. They wouldn't have won that series without Andrew Johns. He single-handed. And then you go to the third game. I used to watch that series every single year during that 11-year stint. Every year before the Origin, every game I would watch all 3 of those games.
And that's the thing. I'm not saying that Andrew Johns shouldn't be an immortal. I'm saying that I would have thought that a team that wins 11 out of 12 would have somebody in that team as an immortal.
No, they just had too many players. That's the thing. They had everybody. Whereas the change...
But surely, I would have thought surely one of them gets in at some point.
They will.
Right,
one of them will.
And I know the players can still be inducted.
It's irrelevant when they retired and when they finished. It's absolutely irrelevant.
Because they've gone back to Ron Coote now.
Again. They've broken that. So that's the thing, right? You're right, but it's because the immortal system is so broken. It doesn't matter. They're not.
I think there's I don't know. Look, I think there's too many in it already.
Yeah.
We've had this chat a couple of times where when Rugby League Week handed over control when Rugby League Week were in charge of the concept, that magazine folded. And then when that magazine folded in 2017, they handed over control. They handed over the Immortals concept to the Australian Rugby League Commission and the NRL in 2018. And then they went and added those 5 players, and it went from 8 to 13 in one hit. And then they've recently added Ron Coote to make it 14. So as we talked about, we thought it should have been left at 8. That they shouldn't have added those bunch of players in one hit. And I would have thought it should have been left at 8, and I would have thought the 9th should have been somebody in that Queensland team. If we talk about St George winning 11 premierships in a row, well, the Maroons won 11 out of 12 Origin series. I would have thought and I'm not saying that's the same as winning 11 premierships in a row, but geez, what an achievement, 11 out of 12 Origins. So I would have thought the 9th should have been somebody from that Queensland team. But anyway.
No, Andrew Johns is better than all of them individually. That's the thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know my thoughts on Queenslanders whinging all the time about State of Origin results, but look, fair's fair, and I would have thought one of them should have been selected.
I'm telling you, just go back and watch that series and actually, just understand.
It was sensational.
Andrew Johns was mainly picked because of 2005. That's why. Because that entire year is such a standout year in football. What the NRL will do, I gather, my new guess is what the NRL will do is in 2028, they'll induct 5 new Immortals into the Hall of Fame, and it'll be Cameron Smith, Darren Lockyer, Jonathan Thurston, Billy Slater, and Greg Inglis. That's my guess. In 2 or 3 more years, it'll be those 5 will be added.
That's the thing. I mean, they may be added in future, but we can sort of only go on what's happened up to this
They're
point.
fully going to add them all 5. I'm telling you. Well, that's my guess. I want to do a Reddit exclamation remind 5 years. Within 5 years, I reckon that's what they'll do. We've got new Immortals coming. Because when the Immortal... I know this wasn't in the rundown.
Yeah, we've gone a bit off.
But when they announced they were announcing an Immortal, the bookmakers had Cameron Smith at $1.40 or something. Ron Coote wasn't even in it. so don't put money on this, but I reckon in 5 years they're just going to add those 5 names. They're going to go all in one go. And it's going to be based on... It's not even going to be based on premierships, anything. It's solely going to... In the lead-up or in the justification, they're going to use exactly what you're talking about. 11 out of 12 State of Origins. And they're going to forget the fact that Cameron Smith won... between 3 and 4 premierships. Between 2 and 4?
Three legitimate premierships. 12, 17, 20, 2 illegitimate premierships
played,
in 07 and 09.
Played more than 400 games and is the only person that did. I think he's a Clive Churchill medal winner, Dally M medal winner.
I'm just going to check that.
Missed 8 goals in one of the grand finals, around 8 goals.
Check this.
They're going to forget Darren Lockyer won multiple premierships. Captained Australia. I think he was, before Cameron Smith, the most capped Australian player, but also I think he captained the most, something like that. Captained most of those State of Origin teams that won. They're going to forget Jonathan Thurston was the first to win a premiership with North Queensland. Dual premiership winner at 2 clubs.
Yeah, 2 Golden Boot awards for World Player of the Year. That's probably what you meant. Yeah, 2007, Cameron Smith won that. And 2017, he won that as well, and he's won 2 Dally M medals in 2006 and 2017.
In 5 years, they're going to do a new Immortal announcement. They're going to announce those 5 guys, and they're going to neglect all of the other things they've done and just talk about 11 out of 12 Origins. I fully reckon. Because the NRL is stupid.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I just think that was a significant achievement, and it should be at least one of those players.
It should have been this year, and it should have been Darren Lockyer because he retired first. That's the thing. It should have been this year, and it should have been Darren Lockyer. If they're going to... It shouldn't have been Darren Lockyer because they shouldn't be going that far backwards. What's the rule? 4 years, 5 years after?
But I mean, that's the thing. At least Darren Lockyer retired after Andrew Johns, unlike Ron Coote, obviously.
But I mean, because it's 4 years or whatever they have to have retired.
I think it's 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
It's 5
so
years.
whoever was 5 years ago, which was Jonathan.
That's the thing. Cameron Smith, I should point out,
was 2021.
2020 was his last season. So
yeah. And Billy Slater was
2018. He retired.
Yeah. So that's the one that should have been actually.
And Thurston was 2018 as well.
Yeah, one of those. If they were going to name out of those guys, it should have been Darren Lockyer 5 years after he retired. They didn't, so therefore he doesn't get it. Sorry, Darren Lockyer. Still think he's well deserving, but more than some of the other people that have been named, simply because he retired after Andrew Johns. But now that he's missed his chance, too bad. Sorry, it's got to be.
Well, that's the thing. If you're adding Ron Coote in 2024. Well, then maybe Cameron Smith will be added in 2074.
Yeah. No, 2074, they'll be still be adding dragons from the 1960s. Like, honestly. And everyone will still be going, where's Darren Lockyer? Where's Cameron Smith? Let's move on to...
we did go off on a bit of a tangent there.
I'm just going to chuck that in. To the rundown.
Oh, yeah, because
Menas. So Menas can put his tags. Yeah. Let's move on to my wonderful Dragons and the Ben Hunt situation.
Yes.
Which also brings into your Bulldogs.
Yes.
So, I don't know if we talked about it last week, but last week I heard... Because obviously Addo-Carr is getting let go from the Bulldogs. It's very funny. I was at a Bulldogs event recently. I was asking one of the higher-ups about that, and of course they wouldn't comment. But then it's been kind of announced now that Addo-Carr's out. And the Dragons were in the hot seat to take him. But then it was announced that Clint Gutherson was also out. And so what I heard... Yeah, we did talk about it last week. What I heard was the Dragons are now pursuing Gutherson instead of Addo-Carr, which does leave the Bulldogs at a bit of an issue, because now they have to find a home for Addo-Carr. But Ben Hunt has been asked about it, and I think Ben Hunt is currently in the House of Cards arc of his storyline, where he's trying to bring down the political party from the inside. So he basically talked crap about Kyle Flanagan, but not in so many words. It was I don't know what the guy's name from House of Cards, the Kevin Spacey character.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Frank, whatever his name is.
I never watched House of Cards because I sort of think when reality in US politics is a lot more interesting than a TV show, well, I'll go with reality.
It's Frank Underwood. Yeah, because in that show, I've only watched the first few episodes. I couldn't get into it. But it's the thing where he doesn't get what he wants. Like he's the House Whip or whatever. He's been promised Secretary of State or something. And he doesn't get it. So him and his wife, played by Robin Wright, go out of their way to collapse the political party from the inside. And it's just become like a vernacular. You're in your House of Cards arc. You're in your Frank Underwood arc.
Yeah.
And I feel like Ben Hunt is that. Because what I saw, and all the people have told me, is he acts like he's everyone's friend and he's trying to help them and he co-sponsors bills that are like good for them, but he screws them and makes it, it's obviously over-the-top political drama, but that's what I think Ben Hunt's doing. He's talking nicely about Clint Gutherson and the Dragons' recruitment policies while also throwing Kyle Flanagan under the bus, because what he said is the Dragons should sign Clint Gutherson as a 5/8.
Yeah. It really sounds like somebody who wants to get fired, doesn't it? You're saying that a potential incoming recruit in Clint Gutherson should play 5/8 instead of the coach's son. Talk about wanting to be fired. I think that's a real good way of going about it. This is somebody who wants to be let go by the Dragon.
Kyle Flanagan had his best year ever. It was the first time he actually looked like a first grader for almost the entire year until that biting incident, right? We've discussed at length on this podcast with our rugby league ambassadors about the lack of halves available for teams. Sam Walker from the Roosters, who is very good, right, is the next $1 million recruit in rugby league. To to put that in perspective, do you think Sam Walker, as good as he is as a half, is worth almost as much as Tom Trbojevic, Daly Cherry Evans, and Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai? The answer is no. But it's because of the lack of halves that people are having to pay overs for halves. And Ben Hunt wants to move Clint Gutherson, a fullback, into the coach's son, who is one of the semi-informed middle-tier halves of the league, but the coach's son.
I'll tell you, one thing I would say, though, is that I know Kyle Flanagan did have his best season this year. I get that. But one thing I would say is, and you're a Dragons supporter, so... I mean, there's other players you'd want as 5'8" instead of Kyle Flanagan, though, right? If they were made available.
Well, I want Amona, but he got sacked because he chased some dude with a hammer.
Yeah, that doesn't really help, does it? Probably not the best idea.
But I also don't want Clint Gutherson. Like, that's the thing. You don't want Clint Gutherson.
Yeah, but I mean, there are other players you would want as 5'8".
Yeah, well, Sanders, right? Like at that kind of level, the lower tier level, that's obviously not the... Because Ben Hunt is the $1 million half in the spine, right? We'll get to him going in a minute, but... You can't have $2 million halves in the spine. You know, you had Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai, now both $1 million players, because Jerome Luai had to go somewhere to get $1 million, right? So you have to get the non $1 million players. There's other guys like Sandon Smith at the Roosters. There's Sam Walker, to me, is a $1 million player. They're everywhere. Those secondary halves that are the Kyle Flanagan secondary half, everywhere. There's probably 16 in the league I'd prefer as a Dragons player. I'm a Dragons fan, not a Dragons player. Dragons fan. But the fact is, he's Shane Flanagan's son.
But that's the thing. So, in that sense, in this instance, the fact that he's Shane Flanagan's son, that holds the club back because you know that he's not going to be replaced as five. Yeah. Well, while his dad's the coach, he's the 5'8". That's it. So. But you as a Dragons supporter, and I know you can only get who's available, I understand that, but you as a Dragons supporter would want other players to be in that position. Yeah, well... So but we know that's not going to happen because his dad's the coach. So his dad being the coach holds them back.
The Dragons had to have... Because when you look at everyone's spine across the league, they have, on average, 1.5, superstar $1 million potential players, except for the Panthers, who have 4. Or 3. No, 4, let's face it, 4. So the Dragons have Sloan at fullback, who is up-and-coming fullback. Not a superstar, not $1 million player. They have Little at hooker, who's pretty good, but not $1 million player. They've got Kyle Flanagan at 6, who's, again, pretty good, but not $1 million player. And he's not even at most clubs wouldn't even be first choice half. He'd be the Sandon Smith at most. And then you have Ben Hunt, who's the $1 million player. So if they're going to keep Kyle Flanagan, which we know they are, they need to find 1.5 superstar players to be on the same level as every other team. So they need to find $1 million half hooker or fullback, and then they need to find a $800,000 half hooker or fullback, $800,000 half hooker or fullback. Fullback is the one where everyone is available. There's so many fullbacks in the league. So they should probably not talking down Sloan, but it's the question is around Kyle Flanagan. We know that Kyle Flanagan isn't going anywhere, so they have to find a fullback, a halfback, or a hooker that can cover for the fact that Kyle Flanagan is the $400,000 half, $400,000 man in the spine.
Yeah, this is the thing. Shane Flanagan's a great coach. He coached Cronulla to their only premiership in 2016, and he didn't just come in and do that. I mean, he took them from the bottom up to the top. That's the calibre of coach he is. He comes, though, at a price. The price is that his son plays at 5'8" in the team. Yeah. That's the price of having Shane Flanagan as your coach.
In theory, can also play halfback. In theory. Yeah. But either way, you've still got to find $1 million person to support him.
Yeah, so he's a supporting half. You need your marquee half with him. And I know you can't you can't have a top 30 squad full of superstars. Of course you can't. There is unless you're Melbourne in 2007 and 2009.
Unless you're Manly, if you're willing to spend, 3/4 of your salary cap on 4 players.
Yeah.
You can have a $8 million spine. But
that hasn't worked for them, has it?
Exactly. That's not the way it's got to work. So if they were to sign Clint Gutherson, which is actually like what seems to be happening, it's the thing that I'm hearing is most leaning in that direction. What it will mean is Gutho will play fullback and Sloan will push out to the wing. Gutho's only got a few more years in him. I don't know how old he is.
I need to check that one.
He is 30 years. So he's got a couple more years on him. Bring him in, mentor Sloan, and then Sloan can go back from the wing to... Because Sloan was dropped a few times, during the...
This is the bizarre thing about the Ben Hunt comments are that it's really not... You think, Clint Gutherson might be going to the Dragons. It doesn't enter your head that he could play 5'8". It just doesn't. And he's gone out of his way to say that at the expense of the coach's son.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
I'll tell you what...
they got to get rid of him.
You may as well just hand in your resignation letter if you're going to make comments like that.
I think... you can go into conspiracy theories. It can also be that he's being kind of coached by his agent to get them to offload him to somewhere. Makes such a toxic. If he makes such a toxic environment around himself, then the Dragons and the coach will be more willing to offload him and also continue to pay him. Because that's what's really happening right now with a few players. We're waiting till the first so that other clubs can buy them, so that the original club can say, you can have them now, but we're not paying anything. But if he makes such a toxic environment that he goes, you can have him now, and the other club says, yeah, because the agents told him, but we'll only pay $200,000 for him, and you're paying the other $800,000. The Dragons will have no choice to do. But okay, cool, because that was the beauty. That was like why all the Dragons fans celebrated James Graham coming over. The Bulldogs were so desperate to get rid of him foolishly in the bad times for the Bulldogs. He is a Bulldog pure, and he works at the Bulldogs. He's an absolute legend, Bulldogs legend. They stupidly let him go. He came over with the Dragons for like $200,000. We were like,
that's yes. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. These comments, no doubt about it. You're right. These comments are strategic. You can tell that that this is his manager talking here as well. And like you said, he doesn't just want to leave the club. He wants to leave with his pay packet.
Yeah.
With his pay packet intact. With the new... Because I think he's only contracted for one more year, 2025. So, as you said, he wants that scenario where not only does he move clubs, but he gets a scenario where he gets all his money because the Dragons have to chip in whatever the new club doesn't pay.
Because it'll be... What will happen, in theory, in November 1 is... Someone like Ben Hunt, unless he's going to the Titans, could be, they're going to, a smart operator will offer him his last contract for 2 years, maybe 3, but most likely 2, for $600,000 to $800,000, right? But if they can take him early, then he'll still get paid $1 million because the Dragons will foot the bill in the difference, and the more crappy talks and the worse he makes it at the Dragons, the more the Dragons will be willing to chip in, and so the less the new club will have to pay, so the easier it is for him to retain that $1.1 million for his last year. Yeah, that's it.
There's certainly method to their madness here.
Meanwhile, he's been linked to the Bulldogs.
Yes. Adrian Projenko of the Sydney Morning Herald was talking about this. He thinks that the Bulldogs might explore the option. I don't get it. I don't get it because of his age. He's 34. I just don't see the point of it. I don't think they'd win a premiership with him as the halfback. This is the thing. We're not talking about Nathan Cleary here. We're talking about a player who, I think off the top of my head, the last time the Dragons made the top 8 was 2018, I believe, off the top of my head. Yeah. So we're talking about a player who doesn't get results for his team, and I know he probably doesn't have a whole lot around him at St George at the Dragons, but this is a player who doesn't have a lot of influence on the result. We've got to remember that. You're not signing Nathan Cleary here. This is a 34-year-old. I know, look, is he a better option than Toby Sexton for the Bulldogs? Look, maybe not, but I mean, Ben Hunt is 34. Toby Sexton is much younger. I'm just looking up his age now. I can't remember off the top of my head. He's 23. So you got one who's 23 and one who's 34. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a 23-year-old compared to a 34-year-old. All right, maybe for 1 year, Ben Hunt might be a bit better than Toby Sexton. Maybe for 2 years he would. But if you commit to Ben Hunt for 2 years, well, then you're not looking at any other halfback for 2 years. And so is Ben Hunt the guy who's going to get you a premiership at the Bulldogs? No, I don't think so. He's 34. I don't think it's the right move for the Bulldogs.
I think this is more agent bullcrap. First of all, he can't be linked to the Bulldogs. No club would ever talk to a player before the 1st of November deadline.
Yeah.
No agent would ever approach a different club before the 1st of November deadline. That would never happen, Dan. So the Bulldogs definitely don't know anything, but I just think it's agent double talk. I think they're trying to... Same deal, right? If the Bulldogs, who are a club on the rise, are in the market for Ben Hunt... You know, I just said he's probably going to get $600,000 or $800,000. The Bulldogs have... Like, the Bulldogs who are on the rise... Okay, and the other clubs that are in the hunt for Ben Hunt are like the Titans, who are much lower but need to go better. In theory, the Dolphins, who are about to go into a post-Wayne Bennett syndrome issue. Those two clubs bidding against the Bulldogs would have to offer more, right? Because the Bulldogs, if the Bulldogs say to Ben Hunt, "Come to us, we're on the rise, you're getting close to a premiership, we'll give you 600." Ben Hunt might go, "Yep, sweet." And then the Dolphins or the Titans would have to go, "Dude, I know we're crappy and we're probably about to die, but we'll give you $1 million, to compete." That's what they're going to have to do to compete against the Bulldogs. So I think it's more just agent bullcrap. Yeah. Bulldogs are in the hunt because players take into account, right? Jerome Luai is a perfect example. He could have stayed at Penrith for more premierships. Does he need more premierships? Does that guy really need more premierships? Honestly, does he need more grand final appearances?
No, but he'll take the extra $300,000 or $400,000 on offer to go to the Tigers.
Because he doesn't need more premierships.
Yeah.
However, if he was at the Tigers, right? If he was going from the Tigers to the Panthers, he would go to the Panthers for less because he's more likely to get premierships. And so other teams would have, like if it was the Dragons, if the Panthers were interested in Ben Hunt, right, and they were willing to pay him $400,000 a year, how much money do you think another club would have to give Ben Hunt to make him not go to the Panthers?
Yeah. Because
what's going to happen if he goes to the Panthers? He's going to get to partner Nathan Cleary and probably win another premiership at this rate.
Yeah.
Or he can go to the Titans, who finished third last.
Yeah, well, they didn't have a good season, did they?
I mean, it was expected. I mean, actually, after the first few rounds, everyone was saying Des Hasler's failed. But again, you look at that Titans team. I tried to get both of our NRL ambassadors to just agree with me, but they're so nice. The Titans team has not been a first grade team without Tino and David Fafita in it. Everyone else through the thing is, So yeah, I think this is all nonsense. I
don't think the Bulldogs will sign Ben Hunt. I mean, you just got to think carefully about it and go, look, this is a team that went from 15th to 6th in 1 year. They're not far away.
Yeah.
Do they really want to go down the path of paying? He's going to take a huge chunk out of your salary cap, and he doesn't have an influence over results. We know that. Aren't a club like the Bulldogs, who I think are on the up anyway. I mean, you got to think next year, I think they're going to improve even more, because I think there's a real gap that we've got two really good sides in the NRL at the moment, and then there's a real gap to the third side. So there's a real opportunity for a club like the Bulldogs to finish in the top 4 next year, to improve again, and that's the next step, is finishing in the top 4. And I just think signing Ben Hunt at a huge price tag, someone who doesn't influence the result, I know that he might be the only option available, but I think they're better off just holding fire. Just wait. Yeah. Just wait. Without him, they finished 6th this year. They're not far off. Just wait for a better option. Wait for one to become available. I think that's the better play here than signing Ben Hunt.
He's not the guy, and I don't think they're doing it. I really just think it's his agent.
No, well, often what they'll do is, you got to be careful. Often the clubs might leak to to journalists saying they're chasing this player when they're actually going for someone else. They want it out there that they're going for Ben Hunt when they want to distract from the real target they're going for.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's what could be playing out.
Yeah, so there's three possibilities, right? And, we also obviously know Phil Gould is a sharp media manager.
Yes.
Either the club is putting it out there because they're trying to make sure nobody understands that who they're really chasing. Yeah. The agent is putting it out there to bump up his price tag for when he goes to the Titans, or the Bulldogs are actually interested in Ben Hunt. Out of those three things, which is the most believable? The first two.
Yeah, the first two certainly are much more plausible than the
exactly.
third one.
I immediately go to agents because I think the agents are the devil. You mentioned the club. All right, fair enough. Nobody believes the Bulldogs actually wanting Ben Hunt. He's not the kind of player that plays the Camp Ferrado style of game as well. That's the other thing. Like, he's not.
Yeah, I mean, if it was Nathan Cleary, of course you'd sign him. Yeah. If it was Daly Cherry Evans, of course you'd sign him. If it was Jerome Hughes or Cameron Munster, of course you'd sign them. It's Ben Hunt. It's a player who doesn't have an influence over the result. He's 34. He carries a huge price tag. You don't sign him. You wait for a better option.
Exactly. That's it for Rugby League.
Yes.
See that? Rugby League season is over and we still got an hour and a half out of it.
There's no shortage. We did have a bit of an off-the-cuff discussion about the Immortals, but anyway, nothing wrong with that.
Well, whenever you mention Andrew Johns. Because it was Andrew Johns, the next step after Andrew Johns that broke the Immortals. But it's cricket time. Yeah, cricket time.
Yes.
And we discussed last week that Steve Smith won't be playing opener.
Yes.
And who was out? Cam Green was out?
Yeah, Cameron Green is out for 6 months, so that opens up that spot in the middle order. Steve Smith, I think, smartly is going to move back down to number 4. And so with David Warner retiring, that means that opening spot with Usman Khawaja at the top of the order is now vacant. And so we're looking for other candidates. We're looking for somebody to put their hand up. Unfortunately, I don't have good news for you, I'm sorry to say. Marcus Harris, we talked about him as a contender. Unfortunately, he's failed twice in this Sheffield Shield game. And I will point out, before people abuse me on social media, that we're only halfway through that Sheffield Shield game between New South Wales and Victoria. I think day 3 has only just got underway. So what's happened is Marcus Harris made 26 and 16 for Victoria in this game. So not a good return from him. That's not a good sign. Now, Sam Constas, a player who's been talked about as a potential, the New South Wales opener, has been talked about as a potential candidate for that opening spot that I'm talking about. He's had some good results recently, some good innings recently. Sam Constas made a bunch of runs, but he got out for just 2 in this game, so not a good result. We look elsewhere in this current Sheffield Shield round. Matt Renshaw, the Queensland opener, another contender. He made just 2 in the first innings. The Queensland opener against South Australia, not good signs. There's also more bad news. Cameron Bancroft, the other contender, for Western Australia, he only got 8 in the first innings against Tasmania. So everywhere you look, nobody's putting their hand up for this spot. As I pointed out, Bancroft averages just 26 in tests. Harris averages just 25. But as you might have said last week, nobody's putting their hand up for this position. That's why they keep talking about Bancroft and Harris, because there's no obvious candidate. And look, even the players who are going to be in the team are out of form. Khawaja got out for a duck in that Sheffield Shield game for Queensland against South Australia. Marnus Labuschagne only got 22. Steve Smith, which we'll get to him in a second, he got out for 3 against Victoria. I actually watched that. Fox are showing that game.
Wow.
Everywhere you look, Australia's batting. There's not good signs heading in to that first test against India.
In that test, you talked about the internet can't say anything because Marcus Harris got out for his second at 16. So it was 26 in his first.
Yeah, and 16
in his second. So it doesn't matter if the test is. No one's doing it. Look,
so I guess the answer here is we've got more cricket to come between now and the first test. The answer to the question basically is, well, we need more time to decide. We need to wait longer to see who puts their hand up.
It looks like we're just going to have to go with the guy who has an average of 26, whoever that is. Because that's going to be the highest average on our openers right now.
But you can only pick the best candidate available, right?
They won't pick Cameron Bancroft no matter what. So there's a lot of actual fear around India coming out because, what is it, they've won their last 2 test series here. They're the only ones who win their series here, and they're going to come for a third, and Australia doesn't have an opener. I mean, the opener doesn't necessarily win you the game because there's, 2 openers, so I've got to do my math. 8 other batsmen in your innings, but the opener sets the standard, They break the ball in. If they don't play well, then the rest of the...
Yeah, it's just a real concern that... just the Australian batting's a concern to me.
Steve Smith's playing in the Sheffield Shield, right?
Yeah, Steve Smith's got out for 3 in this game against Victoria, so that's another concern. So if we're looking at it, Khawaja got out for a duck in this Sheffield Shield game. We don't know who's going to open with Khawaja. Labuschagne only got 22 in this Sheffield Shield round. Steve Smith out for 3 in this Sheffield Shield round. So this top 4 could be a real issue for Australia if they don't make some runs in these later lead-up games to that first test, which starts on November 22. Then we're really going to be, the way it's looking, we're really going to be relying a lot on Travis Head at 5 and Mitch Marsh at 6 in this series.
Cricket isn't really the one form of cricket where you want to rely on one batter.
No, we're relying on players' reputations here. Usman Khawaja, Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith, they're great players, but they're not in form at the moment. We need them to fire in this series.
If you remember in the World Cup, the one-day World Cup, not the T20 World Cup, Australia pulled themselves out of the fire. One player pulled Australia out of the fire multiple times in that World Cup. Who can forget Glenn Maxwell's 198 or whatever the bloody hell it was with back spasms, That doesn't work in Test cricket because you got to do it again, right? So even if, you get someone like you said, like Travis Head comes out and manages to get a century, he's got to do it again in a couple of days. So they need to the openers need to get right. It's a big worry. I work with, a few Indian people, and I hate it when India beats Australia in the cricket because they rub my face in it.
I mean, the good news is India aren't going gangbusters by any means. I mean, they lost a test to we will get to it, but they lost a test to New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So that's the upside for Australia is India are really struggling at the moment too. But Australia really need to get their house in order here.
They do. They absolutely do, and they don't have much time. It's 1 more month.
Yeah. So I guess the answer to this question is, we don't know the answer, and we need to wait. We need to give more time for somebody to stand out from the pack here and put their hand up and take that opening spot for that first test.
Well, we'll know in 3 weeks who the best is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. And meanwhile, speaking of Steve Smith, who's currently playing at number 3 or 4, however you want to write it, denies that he asked to return to 4.
Yeah, he does. So he says that. He says, "Look, I'm happy." He says, "Look, I'm happy batting wherever they want me."
Yeah, they always say that.
Yeah. He says, "I got asked where I'd prefer to bat, and I said 4. I didn't ask to move though." He said he's happy batting wherever. Look, yeah, I'm just worried about. I'm worried about Steve Smith's form again. I mean, out for 3 in that Sheffield Shield game. As we've talked about, he hasn't had a good run over the last couple of years. You're starting to wonder if he has another bad series against India. You're starting to think, well, is he getting towards the end of the road here, Steve Smith? I'm sorry to say it. He's been a great batsman over a number of years now for Australia, but he needs to make runs in this series against India this summer.
Yes, if he doesn't.
And look, I think the only thing, the reason why there hasn't, and of course he's a champion, and you can never write off a champion in sport. That's the number one rule in sports journalism, is never write off a champion. But, probably the only reason why he's safe at the moment is because our batting stocks are struggling so much. There's no one you could say, oh, well, he's really banging the door down to take Steve Smith's spot. There's nobody you could say that about. So that's why there's no pressure whatsoever on Steve Smith, because you go, well, we're going to leave a champion like that in the team because nobody's banging the door down to take his spot.
It's really worrying about, there's quite a few places in the batting order that there's just nobody. But as you said, India's not exactly going well, so...
No. Well, New Zealand had their first test win in India in 36 years. And India got bowled out for 46 in the first innings, so
crazy. That's
the thing that gives Australia hope, is that while Australia is struggling with the bat, Australia never seems to be struggling with the ball. Australia's bowling is its strength, and if India is getting rolled for just 46 in home conditions against New Zealand, well, what are India's batsmen going to do against the Australian bowling attack in Australian conditions? One thing I'd say is I know India have won the last two series out here, but look, those were a long time ago. I think we look a lot more at current form than we do at those series.
Oh, definitely.
And that's a real concern for India. At the moment, it's probably looking like, what sort of series is this one going to be, Australia and India? Looking like it's going to be a low-scoring series with the bat, because it seems like both teams' batting is weak at the moment. And the bowling attacks, I think, are going to exploit that on both sides. Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to be a bowling series, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
The fact that, as you said, it was in India against New Zealand, who are very good, but no Australian bowling attack, and India gets all out for, was it 43?
Well, this is the thing, New Zealand... The New Zealand pitches are nothing like the pitches in India, and the New Zealand bowling attack has gotten India out for 46 and won a test in India. So there's real concerns over India's form going into this Australia series, and that's good for Australia because, as I said, Australia's batting options at the moment are not going well. New Zealand winning that test. It's only their third test win in India in 37 tests. Their first test win in India in 36 years. The second test of 3 starts on Thursday in that series.
Yeah. And over to England.
Yeah, we don't have to spend long on this one. I just put it on the rundown
it's important because it's the summer of cricket. So this has been quite an interesting thing, because we did talk about it last week where England scored 893 or something against Pakistan.
Might have been 823, I think.
800 and something. You know why it's hard to remember? Because what the hell? But Pakistan managed to level the series by winning the next match. Yeah,
they did too. Pakistan won that test by 152 runs.
Yeah.
So they've leveled. So it's a 3-test series, level at 1-1 now. So that'll be a decider. That too will start on Thursday.
There's a lot of cricket on, if you can find it on the televisions. It's all over the shop, actually. It can be on pay TV, it can be on Foxtel, it can be on the internet. It's kind of hard to find because of the...
It was 823 England made in that first test. Yeah.
Ridiculous. And so, on to other sports.
This was a bizarre one.
So, if anybody's been following sports news in the last week, GWS, Greater Western Sydney Giants, the AFL team, has been in the news. So
yes.
Now, they did something. The funny thing about this whole story is, for the first 5 days, you knew something happened, but you didn't really know what, right? Because the AFL controls the media. And then some little bits slipped through, including that the dress theme was inappropriate. There was simulated sex acts. Potentially a staff member dobbed them in or reported it to the AFL. Potentially the management had already left. The coaches were already gone. And then now we get to have like a clearer picture, but still not a very clear picture, I think.
No, well, look, I mean, there's some. This is, you talk about bizarre stories. This is up there with the most bizarre of them. Now, the following players from GWS have been handed 2-game suspensions: Jake Riccardi, Toby McMullen, Harvey Thomas, Joe Fonte, and the delisted Cooper Hamilton. So he probably doesn't care. I mean, he's been delisted. What would he care about a 2-game ban if he's not even playing? But anyway, so Jake Riccardi dressed up as a taxi driver and partnered Josh Fay as Jared Hayne. So, I mean, you know, you can work that one out.
Controversial couples, I think, was the theme. Right?
Yeah, so there was that. Toby McMullen and Cooper Hamilton simulated the September 11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Harvey Thomas dressed as a particular pro sportsman believed to be Josh Giddey.
Yeah, the basketball
We know
player.
what happened with him.
Yep.
And Joe Fonte as a girl as well, acting inappropriately during their skit. And Connor Idun and Lockie Whitfield enacted a scene from the movie Django Unchained, characterising slavery. Now, yeah, I mean...
So it was at their private party that they had, and then they hired outside caterers, and the caterers... I think phones were banned as well, was one of the things I heard.
And I'll just say that Josh Fay, he got a 4-week ban. I mentioned the players who got a 2-week ban. Josh Fay was the one who dressed up as Jared Hayne.
Yeah.
Look,
Look,
I know these are all distasteful. But it's just a dress-up party. Why does everybody have to get offended by everything all the time? They're not saying that they endorse what these people did. It's just dress-ups. It's a Wacky Wednesday. And, of course, the AFL have to go down the PC path of saying that nobody can have fun doing anything anymore. And this is terrible. We've got to ban all these players. I think 13 GWS players have been sanctioned in total.
Yeah, I think the captain they were talking about a $20,000 fine, which was reduced to $5,000 because he didn't show leadership, imposed by the AFL.
It's a controversial dress-up party, okay? I get that. But why does everybody have to go that, well, just because you dress up a certain way, well, that means you endorse everything that these people did or were alleged to
Did they do anything illegal?
It's a dress-up party that's a bit controversial. Please, let's not make a mountain out of a molehill here.
It's such a bizarre thing. And, you know, I saw all the stuff like... It's all about like how the AFL has women in league, and the AFLW GWS team released a statement.
And they said they were offended by it, in particular.
Well, they probably were offended by not being invited. That's terrible. I'm going to get in trouble for that. I think it was taken way over the top and made worse by the constant control the AFL have done, and so it made it just every day more.
It's sort of funny because this is the AFL's worst nightmare. This is as an organisation that's obsessed with their image, far more obsessed than all the other sporting organisations in Australia put together. The AFL are far more obsessed with PR than anyone else. This is their worst nightmare. This is their absolute worst nightmare.
This is the thing, right? Because they kept not saying what went on. The internet, like the AFL subreddit was hilarious. People just kept writing more and more horrific things. It's like it must have been like jokingly, and so many of the jokes that the people made, right, were so much more offensive than anything that actually happened. Okay, and so who is really offended by it that it requires such heavy sanctions? Because from what I can see, it's not the general population. It's the players. I mean, not the players. The management at the AFL and some of the other players And I don't know, when you get a statement from someone like the AFLW team, that's not necessarily coming from the team. That's coming from the media manager of the team. So you don't really even know if the AFLW team members care, actually.
Yeah.
And it's like, honestly, just go on the internet and see how many people were actually offended.
Why did they feel like they had to go to their AFLW team and pretend like...
Because it's that was like a line you can follow, right? Because it became a whole thing about the AFLW and how the AFL is so supportive of women in league and how the AFL is the women and the AFL like politically correct women, blah, blah. And the GWS have a women's team and, you know, so there's women involved in the GWS and they support women and stuff like that. So we have to go and ask the women what they think.
Yeah. It's PC
like,
nonsense,
it's just absolutely crazy. And, yeah, like I said, like, it's so easy. What seems to be happening now everywhere is, rather than actually worrying if people are offended, right? Rather than actually finding out if people are offended, they worry that people may be offended, and so go over the top to say that we know that you're offended, so therefore we've solved it. Whereas everyone's sitting there going, "Bro, I wasn't offended."
An overcorrection, a disproportionate reaction. Look,
seriously, the stuff that was being said on the subreddit was offensively hilarious and way, way worse. Like, they were talking about, like, they must have had a devil-worshipping baby sacrificing party or something like that, trying to get themselves their first premiership and things like that.
I mean, look, Josh Fahey dresses up as Jared Hayne. That doesn't mean he's endorsing what Jared Hayne did, although I will point out that Jared Hayne was not convicted over that. I'll point that out. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean he's endorsing what Jared Hayne was alleged to have done, although later his conviction was quashed. Mm-hmm. Toby McMullen and Cooper Hamilton simulated the September 11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. That doesn't mean that they endorsed the September 11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Harvey Thomas dressed as Josh Giddey. That doesn't mean he endorsed what Josh Giddey did.
Was found nothing.
All right, and another, so like the Jared Hayne scenario, no conviction there.
Suspiciously, but nothing.
Yeah.
NBA does have a lot more money to quash that stuff, though. So
Connor Idun and Lockie Winfield enacted a scene from the movie Django Unchained, characterising slavery. That doesn't mean they're endorsing slavery.
Well, was Quentin Tarantino endorsing slavery when he made Django Unchained?
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino made the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe the AFL should sanction Quentin Tarantino then.
Quentin Tarantino gets a lot of flack by the PC African American people for using the N-word too much. It's like in his scripts. And Django Unchained is like crazy. But yeah, like it's Quentin Tarantino made the movie. The movie exists. This reminds me of when one of the Kardashians got in trouble for having a Handmaid's Tale birthday party. Right? Everyone had to dress up as the Handmaid. So that was a terrible TV show. I don't care what anyone says. Like, absolutely awful. I couldn't even get through the first 20 minutes of an episode. Just because something is slow and boring doesn't make it good. Okay, just so you know. It's not artistic. It's just drivel.
I'll tell you what was terrible. Sorry to go slightly off topic, but there was I don't know if you heard about that show that was on the ABC the other night, that Plum, the one about the Brendan Cowell show about rugby league and CT.
No, I have this on to watch. I have it recorded to watch. I should imagine.
Do you?
Yeah.
Am I going to spoil it for you by telling you what I really think of it?
No, tell me.
It was terrible. It was a terrible TV show.
Oh, well,
I'm sorry for going off topic, but you mentioned these TV shows and...
Like, one of the Kardashians, I don't know or care which one, got in trouble for having a Handmaid's Tale party. Like, that doesn't mean she endorses the crap about She's a woman. It doesn't mean she endorses the Handmaid's Tale.
Just because you go somewhere dressed up as somebody. And I think, was it Dominic Perrottet, the former New South Wales Premier, didn't he have to apologise because he went to one of these parties dressed up as a Nazi when he was 20 or something?
Yeah,
This is the thing. Just because you go to just because Dominic Perrottet, and I don't know for sure that he was 20, I'm going off the top of my head here, it doesn't matter. Just because he went to a party when he was 20 dressed up as a Nazi, that doesn't mean he's endorsing what the Nazis did. Just like these players are not endorsing everything here.
Our loyal comrade, communist leader Justin Trudeau, the President Prime Minister of Canada, wore blackface when he was in university. Kevin Hart got kicked off the Oscars because of homophobic tweets that he made 20 years ago or something. Not 20 years ago. Twitter isn't 20 years old. Shut up, internet. But he refuses to delete them. And he refuses to apologise again for them. I like his stance. He says, I apologised for them once. I was young, I was ignorant, and now I know better. But I'm not going to delete them, and I'm not going to keep apologising for them. You only need to apologise for crap once. And then it's over. Then it's done. Like, that's it. If they did
what's the point in the apology if you have to do it a number of times?
If these guys offended people, I'm sure they're sorry. That's it. It's over. We won't do it again. We didn't realise it was offensive. But again... The only people who were actually offended by anything they did was the AFL.
That's the thing. Who looks at that and goes? Who looks at that and goes? Oh, two players. What was this thing with the September? Two players simulated the September 11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Who looks at that and goes? Oh, I'm so offended by that.
No one cares.
Who looks at things like that? Yeah, the AFL, yeah. I'm just laughing so much at what the reaction from the AFL hierarchy would have been to this, because it would have been their absolute worst nightmare.
Well, it's my worst nightmare, and they made it worse by controlling the media. Honestly, it could have been if they didn't control it, if it just came out when it happened, it would have been. I'd really like to know the motivations of the person who reported it, because were they actually offended? I highly doubt it. Or were they just looking for a quick buck? Going to go to the news and say, "Oh, you know what they did? Give me some money and I'll tell you what they did."
Just because you go dressed up as something, that doesn't mean you're endorsing what happened. Yeah. It's a dress-up party. All right, it's a bit edgy, but look, who cares? It's a dress-up party.
Nobody cares. Honestly, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so on to tennis though.
Yes.
And now we know say his name. Rafael Nadal. has announced his retirement. But him and Novak Djokovic are going to face off one more time.
Yeah, sorry, they've actually played. They've just played. So the third place match in what was called the Six Kings Slam. So this is Saudi Arabia's little foray into tennis.
They get paid $1 billion for it in the first round.
Yeah, these huge, and I will go through it in a second, these huge prize packets for these players. So it was called the Six Kings Slam, this event, and Djokovic played against Nadal. It's not officially counted as a meeting between them, but look, it's the last time that they've played against each other. This huge rivalry between the two. Djokovic, they played 60 times officially. This was number 61, though, as I said, not counted. Djokovic leads the count 31-29. Djokovic won that match in straight sets. Nadal was presented with a golden racket, a racket made out of gold by the organisers after the match. So there you go. That'd go for a fair bit if he sold it, I would have thought. Not that he needs the money, of course. So, yeah, I mean... The pay that was on offer for these players. So each of the 6 players in the event were reportedly guaranteed $1.5 million for just participating. That's a fair pay packet. Yannick Sinner won the event. Your best friend Yannick Sinner, and got $6 million for winning. So that'll give him a lot of steroids. That'll give him some consolation if he does get that 1 or 2 year ban.
He can now go to the chemist and ask for many steroids.
But yeah, to put that into context, so Alcaraz won 2.4 million, I think it's pounds, for winning at Roland Garros, and 2.4 million euros for winning at the French Open, 2.7 million pounds for winning at Wimbledon. I haven't converted the currency, but it's a lot of money.
About double, yeah.
Whereas Sinner won Australian at 3.15 million for winning the Aussie Open, and 3.6 million US for winning the US Open. So he gets $6 million for just this 3-day event or whatever it was in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabian money is beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
When it comes to sport, they still think it's money laundering.
Yeah, so a lot of money for those players. Yeah, as I said, Yannick Sinner beating Carlos Alcaraz in the final.
Only because of drugs. It's only because of steroids. Carlos Alcaraz would have won if it wasn't for the steroids. And that's everything I'll ever say about it.
I'm just going to have to live with that now. Yeah. This is the perception now.
The only reason he wins is because of the steroids.
This is the problem when you get done for drugs.
If he had have copped to it, said it was accidental and taken a suspension, I would be less harsh on him, like I am on Khalil Roundtree. But the fact he copped to it, got popped by it, and then made up some nonsense story, and then just hired a really fancy lawyer and got off. Yep, he only won because of steroids. Star next to his name for the rest of his life now, until he gets suspended and learns his lesson. But, Donald Trump will be playing at the Australian Open.
Yeah. After he wins the US election, Donald Trump will be playing at the Australian
Open. That's in less than a month. He's going to win at the US election, then he's going to head on down to Australia, start training for tennis. And he knows a great tennis player. He's a good friend. He's got many friends who is a tennis player. And his good friend Nick Kyrgios will actually be making an appearance.
Just to clear that up, his best friend Nick Kyrgios is his body double.
Fantastic. Nick Kyrgios confirms he'll play at the Australian Open, but will Nick Kyrgios actually play at the Australian Open? I don't think so.
Look, he says... my only motivation to come back and play is to try and win a Grand Slam, and I'll give it one more shot. He says my main motivation is to shut people up by winning a Grand Slam. So that's
I expect him not to come. So I expect him to pull out. He'll have something, or he'll quit in the first round or something. I have no expectation that he'll play at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of players in front of him. We've got Yannick Sinner, of course, your best friend, the world number one.
Wouldn't that be a great final match? Drug Cheat versus Winey McWinison.
I'd be interested in who you would go for in that match. But anyway.
I couldn't even say, well, tennis is the real winner.
So we got Yannick Sinner, number one, won 2 majors this year. Carlos Alcaraz, number 2, won 2 majors this year. And he's won 4 in total. I think off the top of my head, yep. Alexander Zverev, number 3. Novak Djokovic, of course, number 4. Daniil Medvedev at number 5. So these are the players that Nick Kyrgios is going to have to take down if he wants to win a major. And I just can't see it happening, to be honest.
No, it's not going to happen. No. That's it for... there's also UFC 308 on Sunday. I totally keep forgetting because it's on at 5 a.m. Australian time. Where Max Holloway will take on Ilia Topuria for the featherweight championship, and Khamzat Chimaev will take on Aussie Robert Whittaker in a 5-round co-main event. If you don't know anything about UFC, Khamzat Chimaev is basically, to me, the Nick Kyrgios of the UFC. He's like on a 13-fight win streak or something like that. After every one of his very rare appearances, he'll be like, I smash everybody! Give me championship! And he's pulled out of like 18 fights. His cancelled bouts is more than his actual fights. He's had, like in the last 2 years, something like 7 cancelled bouts. So, as I was saying yesterday, a few of my friends, that fight will be on when the gate closes and all. Could be any minute before that comes out, pulls out. But it should be a good one. As I said, 5 a.m. for the main card is a hard ask, though. The only place to watch it in Sydney is the casino. Because pubs aren't allowed to be open at 5
a.m. You going to go to the casino?
No. Thinking, depending on the timing, I'm thinking of going to the gym and streaming it for fear of the gym people.
Yeah, nice.
Because you don't want to, also, because it's 5 a.m., you don't want to buy a pay-per-view for yourself for $60. But you don't want to invite your mates to your house at 5 a.m. So we were talking about what to do, but I do have some stuff on Sunday that I might not be able to do. So it's kind of annoying. This is the reason why piracy sites exist, actually, in Australia, and why Australia is one of the largest pirating nations in the world when it comes to entertainment, because of crap like 5 a.m. starts in the UFC.
Yeah.
Learn your lesson, Dana White.
Yeah, what do you expect,
Because as I said, can't invite your friends over. Don't want to pay $50 for a pay-per-view for yourself. Can only go to the casino in all of the cities. If your city doesn't have a casino, what are you going to do? Maybe they're 24-hour leagues clubs? I don't even know anymore, is there?
No, I don't think that'd be 24 hours, no.
So the only place you can go is the casino. Yeah. And no thank you. Because then you're going to pay $50 for parking anyway.
So the Canterbury leagues might be 24 hours because they got the pokies running hot there.
Oh yeah, maybe they run the
Yeah, they'll take you at any hour if you empty out your wallet in the poker machines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's it for the week. Don't worry, there'll be more next week. That was actually quite a long one because, thank you, NRL. When there's no rugby league gives us news. That should be the new NRL slogan.
Yeah, we're certainly not short on news in this off-season.
When there's no rugby league, the NRL will give you news. We'll see everybody next week with an update on that, how the Aussies go. And hopefully the cricket opener position firms a little bit more.
Yeah, hopefully somebody puts their hand up and makes some runs in those Shield games.
And don't forget to listen to the Smart Backer Winner Racing Update for your tips. And follow at SmartB app on all social media. There is Subversion coming up again in November. I'm thinking of getting one of the Subversion people on to preview that too. Either George or Matt, or both George and Matt. And don't forget to go to optimumcbd.store to buy all your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to purchase, and free delivery on any order over $99. That's about all. Bye, Dan. Bye, Producer Chair.
Thanks, John. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, definitely.